Good morning. It's Friday, March 18th, and we're heading into a weekend here. So let's get started on what the weather conditions are going to be this weekend and into next week. And let's look at the current conditions right now. And right now, we've got kind of a mixed bag across the United States, but generally the east and west coasts are generally pretty nice. Looking at the west coast, we have a little bit of a weak front coming into the west coast, so there are some scattered showers along the west coast, but generally temperatures are pretty nice over the south and southwest portion of the United States with clear skies going on there. Temperatures ranging from the 50s to mid 60s. North of this front, though, the temperatures are a little bit cooler, and they'll be cooling down even more so as this polar front begins to seep back into the central portion of the United States. It's in the central portion of the United States. We've got some interesting weather going on. We got a little bit of snow up here in North Dakota, but we got a nice little batch of snow across southern portions, south central portions of Colorado and Kansas, which eventually turns into some rain across Missouri. And then we got some active weather here along this front that came across the other day with some scattered showers and a couple of severe thunderstorms along the Red River Valley. And then below that, we got some balmy weather over southern portions of Texas and Florida, and some scattered showers and some pretty heavy thunderstorms in New Orleans area right now along the stationary front. Now, north of that stationary front, the conditions are a little bit cooler. They're about 5 to 10 degrees cooler than what's below that front, and there's some scattered thunderstorms across portions of Mississippi. Moving in towards the northeast, though, conditions are going to be getting colder here as this polar front moves southeast here, and you'll see some scattered showers and maybe some snow showers in the mountains, but temperatures will be dropping throughout the day in this area. Looking at the watch warning map, not a lot of major stuff going on at this point in time. Still, flash flood watches and warnings and advisories still in effect across the central portion and south central portion of the United States. There is some fire watch advisories here in effect for portions of West Virginia and western Kentucky. And then there's some freeze warnings here for northern tier of Oklahoma and northwestern portions of Arkansas around the Arklatex. And then a frost warning here for the eastern portions or southwestern portions of Missouri here. That's a pretty good area there. A couple of severe thunderstorm warnings here that we see. And then in the most of Colorado here has a winter weather advisor and a couple of counties in winter storm warnings, and portions of southern Wyoming have a couple of winter weather advisories, but can't speak today. Along the west coast, not much going on, just some wind advisories going on out here and a high wind watch around the Seattle area, mostly in the Cascades area. Looking at the eastern satellite, our mess is pretty much in the central portion of the United States. It's going to be kind of messy out there. And then along that polar front that's coming down out of Canada here, there's going to be some scattered snow showers and some showers along with that. Along the Gulf Coast, there'll be some scattered showers and thunderstorms along that stationary front throughout the day. And then into the Central Plains, there'll be some thunderstorms and some snow also with that cooler air that's coming down out of Canada. Looking at the west here, we have a weak front from a strong storm system that's way out here in the Gulf of Alaska. But this front is weakening as it approaches the coast here, so there's not going to be a lot of precipitation like we've seen, but their clear skies are going to be coming to an end here. Pretty strong onshore flow with a good marine layer along the most of the coast of California here, so beach lovers aren't going to get much sunshine, at least for the morning times. But as you go into the interior, it's going to warm up quite a bit as we've got great sunshine and high pressure in charge over most of the central Intermountain West and the Southwest there. Looking at the radar at this point in time, again, we said on the western coast there is some drizzle and some showers off the coast there, and then some snow off the mountains there. A little bit of snowing around the Salt Lake City area. Most of the snow right now is concentrated in the central portions of Colorado and Kansas, where it converts over to rain here, massive rain with drizzle and so forth, and then scattered showers and thunderstorms across southeastern Oklahoma, with a couple of severe at this point in time. A few pretty potent storms out here in Mississippi, and then some storms along that stationary front along the Gulf Coast with a pretty severe thunderstorm south of New Orleans. And looking at the northeast here, just some scattered snow showers and some rain showers out here. This will continue throughout the day today. Nothing really bad right now, and the weather in general is not super bad at this point. Now we're going to look at the severe weather situation. yesterday, and pretty much like today, there's going to be a continuation of severe weather across the southeastern portion of the United States and south central portion of the United States. There was a couple of tornadoes yesterday, but mostly that was hail reports. We had 97 hail reports and 69 wind reports, but there was some significant hail, up to 2 inches over southern portions of Mississippi and within the Texas area there. So, looking at today, the severe weather outlook, pretty much the same thing. Slight risk of severe thunderstorms for a large portion of south eastern Texas, all of Louisiana, the southern half of Mississippi, and a couple of counties in Alabama. Then a marginal risk of severe weather around that area, and then a large swath of general thunderstorms all the way from about Oklahoma City to about Atlanta, over to Wilmington, and to portions of northern Florida there. So anywhere in this area could receive some severe weather, but this is going to be the greater area. Tornado risk, we'll look here in a moment, doesn't look that high. It's going to be mostly hail and damaging winds, but again, we're in that time of the year. Expect anything with thunderstorms. So looking at the current dew points in this area, dew points are pretty high. South of the stationary front, they're in the upper 60s and low 70s, so it's quite moist and juicy. So thunderstorms have sufficient moisture to be able to build up. Not a lot of flow here aloft and at the surface here, so it's going to be a lot of, again, heavy rains and strong gusty winds, maybe a couple of wet microbursts and hail. But I don't think we really have a high tornado risk at this point. Above this front, dew points are mainly in the mid 50s to low 60s. So again, sufficient for thunderstorms, but nothing super outrageous at this point in time. And then above that, there's quite a bit of dry air associated above this frontal boundary. Looking at the CAPE values, convective potential energy, the CAPE values are quite high here. We're reaching up to 1,500 to almost to 2,000 joules in some spots of southeastern Texas. And then we even have some higher CAPE values off the Gulf of Mexico. Gulf of Mexico is quite warm. A lot of moisture sitting here, so that's going to be interesting for later in the tornado season as we get there. So, there's a lot of energy in the atmosphere south of the stationary front for thunderstorms to form. Looking at the convective inhibition, there is some inhibition along that stationary front, so that's going to prevent it from lighting up too badly. But south of that, there's not a lot, and a lot of this is expected to disappear later today. There's the available energy is more than enough to overcome a lot of this today, so there will be thunderstorms. Looking at the lifted indices, values are already -5 or less. So we've got quite a bit of unstable air across south of this stationary front. So we'll see a lot of activity along the Rio Grande River Valley and along this frontal system later today. Looking at the shear values, and this is where or the helicity values, a strong storm relative helicity. Most of the helicity is up here in Kansas and northern Oklahoma. There are some values out here of around 150, which is decent enough to cause some thunderstorms to rotate, so that's where we'll get the hail situation going. But I don't think there's much of a tornado threat today at all. If there's some thunderstorms can form along this polar front, you may get some rotation, but nothing major. The only place where I see that there could be a couple of tornadoes out here by San Angelo. If we can get some thunderstorms forming here, but they'll be isolated, very isolated, and we'll have to see how the shear increases or the helicity increases over time. Looking at the EHI values, again, the EHI values are pretty strong out in the Gulf of Mexico and along the Rio Grande Valley. So anywhere from Del Rio down to Laredo, we got some decent EHI values. I expect to see some pretty strong rotating storms in this area. May see some good hook echoes like we did a couple of weeks ago. But I don't expect any tornadoes. We might see some funnel clouds, but some water spouts out here. But most of that activity is off the coast, so it might increase and creep a little bit northward and bump up against this front. Anywhere along this coastal region, we could see some pretty potent storms. But I don't, again, not a tornado outbreak or anything like that to worry about at this point in time. Now, looking at the 6-hour forecasted HRR model. This is about valid for 21Z today. Quite a bit of thunderstorm activity all the way from south of this front, we got quite a bit of shower and heavy rain shower activity covering most of Missouri, some snow back here in Kansas, and then some scattered showers along this front. Kind of a They're forecasting quite a potent little storm system moving through portions of Little Rock. We have to keep an eye on that. Some isolated storms. So wherever we can get these isolated storms popping up is where we're going to have to watch things. And then there's some isolated storms way back here in Texas here that might produce some hail, damaging winds, and again, we'll have to see if we can get anything rotating. And then quite a bit of activity out here in Alabama and Mississippi and along this frontal boundary, as probably as a weak upper disturbance and some upper level winds are at play here. Now this is where we're going to look at the winds aloft, and looking at the 925 millibars. That's this is what we look at for the closest to the surface to see if we can get some good backing of winds, and really there's not a lot going on here that's sufficient enough to create any kind of strong rotation at the surface that would pose a greater threat for tornadoes. So everything's pretty weak here. Winds are less than probably 20-25 knots at this point, and then we have some stronger winds behind that frontal system across portions of Oklahoma, but that's not going to pose any threat for us at this point in time. Looking at the 850 millibar, about 5,000 feet. Again, it's pretty weak. We have a weak, low pressure system over southwestern portions of Oklahoma, so I don't expect a lot. Kind of interesting though, we have pretty much a northerly flow coming into the eastern portion in the New England areas, so expect some pretty cold weather filtering out into portions of the north central portion of the United States and into the northeast. So spring is going to go bye-bye for a little bit in those areas. High pressure across the west here, so it's going to continue to warm up there. Looking at about 10,000 feet at 700 millibars. Again, a weak jet across Oklahoma. Across where the severe weather is expected, not a lot of high-level winds, so thunderstorms are going to be kind of slow-moving, anywhere from 5 to maybe 15 miles an hour or knots, which is not very fast, so expect some flooding to take place again there in some of these areas, which is not good. A little bit of a jet max across where that polar front's at, but nothing super strong. This is where we got the really nasty weather, cold weather. It's going to be coming into the northeast here as it spills in there. Across the 500 millibar, about 18,000 feet, a strong jet max coming out of Canada across the central portion of the United States, and then going off into the northeastern portion of the United States. And then we have a kind of I wouldn't call it a subtropical jet, but it's there across Mexico into portions of Florida. And because we have a kind of a convergent flow here, I don't expect any really major weather across Florida. There's not a lot of venting going on here. The air is more convergent, so even though we will have thunderstorms, it's not really conducive to tornado activity. A little bit of defluence here across Missouri and Arkansas. That's where we may see some potent little storms pop up, but again, I think the tornado threat's pretty low. And then looking at 300 millibars, again, a lot of energy in this ribbon of the polar jet here. It's dipped far enough to the south. It's kind of bisecting the northern tier of the United States from the colder air aloft and the warmer air down south. So this pattern is going to continue the next couple of days as it tries to figure out how it's going to handle itself. Now let's look at the aviation weather here. And right now we do have a couple of convective segments for some thunderstorm activity up to 45,000 feet in southeastern Oklahoma, and then some thunderstorm activity across Mississippi at 38,000 feet and 40 to 45,000 feet along the stationary front over the Gulf of Mexico. There are some general thunderstorm outlooks out here across the southern tier of the United States, but in general the United States will be free. The rest of the United States will be pretty free of thunderstorms. Turbulence, pretty clear at this point in time, but I would expect anywhere associated with that jet stream where it gets up to about 90, 100 knots. There'll be some turbulent segments later on today, expecting. And then icing, the same thing, especially with this cooler air that's beginning to come in. I would expect some icing to begin to take place across the northeastern with some icing segments and air mets associated with that. Moving on to the 5-day forecast here, and this is where, I should probably say this is model madness here because the models have been all over the place and it's really hard for them to handle what the weather conditions are going to be over the next 5 days. Now, I did look at the models in comparison today and they seem to be coming a little bit better, more aligned with one another, but really the weather pattern is going to kind of remain unsettled across pretty much from about Montana to Texas eastward, as we have this high pressure system that's sitting over portions of Canada that's pushing cold air aloft into the northeast, and then some cooler air, across the northern tier of the United States, and high pressure ridge along the west, and then this low upper level low that keeps passing some weak disturbances across that stationary front along the Gulf of Mexico. So the weather's going to remain unsettled along the Gulf of Mexico and the central portion of the United States that over the next couple of days as some bands of showers move through. Looking tomorrow, this low across the central portion of the United States becomes a little bit more concentrated with some decent energy along that polar front. Again, nothing, I don't think anything major is going to happen at this point in time. The winds aloft are not really conducive to a severe weather event of any kind. High pressure ridge really begins to bulge across the western portion, western tier, and Intermountain West. So any weather that tries to move on to the west coast is going to be shunted back into the Pacific. With there might be a little bit of shower in Washington and Oregon, but along the coast, but nothing major. We'll continue to see disturbed weather with this upper level low off the southern portion of Baja pushing little disturbances along that stationary front there. So as you can see on the surface front, again, there's not really any prominent surface features except for the surface low out here by South Carolina. Again, we might have a couple of surface lows out here along this front, but continued precipitation where it's cooler. There's going to be some snow out here in portions of the mountains out here in southern Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and most in Virginia. Now, looking on Sunday, this storm system becomes a little bit more concentrated. We have two centers of low pressure system. There was at one point we were forecasting a big storm out here later, but I think the models are not jumping on that anymore. We do have high pressure filtering down with some much cooler air into the southeastern portion of the United States. High pressure aloft along the west. It's going to keep the Intermountain West clear. And storm systems now begin to move in towards the west and undercut this high. So we'll begin to see some rain increase from about San Francisco on northward up into Canada there. So we see here on the surface chart this low pressure system forming south of New England there. I don't think this is going to be a big nor'easter, so I don't think we have anything to worry about there. Looking at Monday, again, onshore flow on the west here, so now we're going to begin to see more rain and snow come into the northwestern portion of the United States over the next few days. High pressure now is beginning to flatten across the Intermountain West and into the central portion as we begin to see some warmer temperatures coming in there. You can see that here on the surface chart. And then along the west, on the eastern portion of the United States, that trough becomes elongated along the eastern coast. So we're not seeing the deep low that was being forecasted earlier in the models. It's more of just a trough at this point. And most of the precipitation is being pushed off the coast anyways. High pressure over the southeast is going to keep conditions cool and crisp, so we'll see some frost going on there. Now looking at Tuesday, we're seeing that upper level low begin to move in towards the west here, and we'll see some cooler temperatures begin to come in play here. The wind is across the rest of the United States is mostly zonal at this point in time, so temperatures will begin to moderate across the United States. Looking at the surface, we do have a pretty strong surface low beginning to form in the southeastern portion of Wyoming, which we'll have to monitor down the road. But with high pressure across the Gulf of Mexico, not a lot of moisture is going to be coming into that storm system. It's going to be remaining quite dry at this point. The Intermountain West will remain a little bit unsettled with some snow and some showers, and then some snow and showers with a weak disturbance and a northwest jet coming into the northeastern portion of the Great Lakes area. And finally, looking at Wednesday here, this trough digs further south, but again, it's positively tilted, so the southwest will begin to see some cooler weather. I would expect some windier weather. And then on the surface level, we have a pretty potent surface low forming out here, 996 millibars on the southwestern portion of Iowa. Now the flow here, we're going to have to watch this on Wednesday. Again, we have a warm front draped across the northern tier of the United States here, which scattered showers, maybe some thunderstorms, some snow above that, and some ice here. Looks like in the upper Midwest. Some decent snows out here in Wyoming and Colorado that will continue across the West. Right now, the charts are not showing any kind of precipitation forming into Wednesday. But again, we're out here in the land of craziness, and we're never sure what's going to happen at this point in time. But we're going to have to watch it. It is a deep low, like we did a couple of days earlier in this week. We had a strong surface low form, and we had some pretty potent tornadoes form. So it is that time of year. We're going to have to monitor this over the next few days and see how the models begin to play out over time. Finally, we're going to take a look at the 5-day quantitative precipitation and snow forecast. Looking at the quantitative precipitation, a lot of precipitation coming into the west here, and a lot of precipitation over the southeast. But over the southwest, it's going to continue to remain dry. Northern tier of the United States will see some precip, but nothing too crazy at this point. Most of the precip will be remaining below 2 inches of rain. Looking at the snow, and this is the 10-to-1 ratio here. A lot of snow in the Intermountain West, which is definitely needed, and the northeast and northwest. There's a band of snow that's going to come down with a weak clipper and associated with that jet over the later part of the week. And then we got some little bit of decent snow over the weekend that could be taking place over portions of Maryland and the Virginia areas. So we'll have to watch that. Again, we'll keep an eye on this and see how it goes over time, but nothing super crazy happening over the next several days. So we're going to be off Saturday and Sunday. We'll be back on Monday. We hope you have a great weekend, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.